Stomp!
Ow, my toe!
Sorry about your toes, pal.
You're not sorry?
Correct. Catch you in the tunnels.
It's all smoke and mirrors and ones and zeros. Wake up.
And so I think we need to understand that we've crossed a barrier here and we've entered into a new realm, a new space. And when you filter these type of things that you're questioning through that understanding, well, then things seem to make sense. And they seem to not only make sense, but they make common sense. Yes, there is, a lot of stuff going on in science, whatever. There's always good in the midst, right? But I'm talking about the stuff that clearly they try to rationalize things when there's something beyond that rationale lurking in the background where the truth resides. That is what explains all this phenomena that there is no rational explanation for, as much as they try to present it to you. And so, yeah, wear that tinfoil hat proudly. I know I will. So you know what I think? I think we need to throw out rationale. That's what I think. We are entering into a time that I would say, in comparison, is like the Twilight Zone. If you haven't noticed, all the things happening out there on the world stage and the latest, craze over, disclosure of UFO, UAP, whatever, the latest craze over that disclosure that was coming. And a lot of the information, I don't know how many people are out there actually paying attention to it. It seems like a lot of people are digging in. But from what I've seen, smoke screen, distraction, nothing of value. And even if it was, I got a better word than disclosure. And that word is deception, because that's what's behind it anyway, okay? And so I think we need to understand that we've crossed a barrier here and we've entered into a new realm, a new space. And when we're talking about the information within that space, this realm that we are now in, we need to put to bed this idea of rationalizing everything, okay? Because if you haven't noticed, there are many, 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 many things out there that are beyond rationale. And so for all these smart people out there with PhDs and big degrees and titles and blah, 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 don't care, okay? Don't care about your scientific view on anything, really. Because much of it, it's just been proven to not be true. Period. Period. End of story. Don't care. All right? Yes, there is, a lot of stuff going on in science, whatever. There's always good in the midst, right? But I'm talking about the stuff that clearly they try to rationalize things when there's something beyond that rationale lurking in the background where the truth resides. And if we could just use one example of this, and there is, we could go on for days how this applies. But just in this one example of archaeology, because it's the first one that comes to mind, and the one that's most blatantly obvious, in my opinion. But in this realm of mainstream archaeology, what you will discover is that there seems to be a lot of building techniques that are seemingly unexplainable. Yet the smart men, the people with the letters behind their name, like to tell us, they did it with pulleys and millions of slaves and maybe elephants. They come up with all these things to try and rationalize how this happened. This architecture that we cannot begin to simulate today with our own modern technology, as advanced as we claim to be here today. We can't build what they built. We can't replicate what they've done. our construction methods are not even close to the same level. Have you seen the joints and the size of the stones in these constructions? And they're trying to tell you that these massive, and we're talking tonnage of solid rock and different materials, hard materials that come from oftentimes, far away, miles and miles away. And yet these massive stones just happen to appear here in this location. A lot of times, again, miles away from where they were, taken from. Quarried, that's the word I'm looking for. And yet their thing is, well, they probably floated them down on logs in the river and then pulled them off with lots of people and using geometrical ideas through ropes and pulleys and blah, 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 and they try to give you this rational explanation for these type of things when clearly it doesn't pass the smell test, okay? Much of what these people are saying, it's clearly not true. There's just no way. And so there is another explanation, but see, that explanation involves hidden history. It involves ancient type artifacts and things that, well, you weren't intended to know about. And we can know this by things such as, the Smithsonian hiding, bones of giants and all the things that the Smithsonian has done over the years to, contribute to everybody's, ability to understand the world that was back in our history. Yeah, if you look deep enough, you'll find that the Smithsonian, they played a part, all right. And the part they played was in suppression of information. That's the part they played. So you gotta ask why. And then when you have their mouthpieces out there trying to give you rational reasoning behind all these things, well, you better start questioning some of that, okay? Because if you haven't noticed, like I said in the beginning, we have entered a new realm here. And nothing is beyond the realm of possibility here, okay? And so it is okay to put your critical thinking cap on and to question these mainstream narratives in areas such as archaeology, because it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't, okay? And this goes on all over the world. You have pyramids on different continents. Who had the idea of that building style and how did it transfer from one continent to the next? And how did they, there's so many questions around it and they just rationalize it all. We need to throw that rationale right in the garbage where it belongs, because if you weren't aware of it yet, let me be the one to break it to you. We live in a supernatural, spiritual realm. And that realm is just as much supernatural and spiritual as it is physical. And when you filter these type of things that you're questioning through that understanding, well, then things seem to make sense. And they seem to not only make sense, but they make common sense. Okay? Something that, the smart people that use big words that have the letters behind their name and the degrees hanging on their wall. Yeah, they like to confuse you with their big speech because they're so smart. You know what the Bible says about these smart guys? What happens when you listen to them instead of listening to common sense, instead of listening to your own senses? Yeah. We need to throw rationale right out the window, because it doesn't apply here in this reality. Sorry, there's just no place for it here. And I am sick of these mainstream voices, whether it's in archaeology or another of many spaces where they all reside, okay, in the area of controlling information. because it's always trying to be controlled through some rationale. And that rationale, what it does in the end is it leads you astray from the truth. And that truth is that you are a spiritual being in a spiritual realm, and that there is supernatural phenomena and dimensional entities that are just as much a part of it as you are. Okay? And so again, when you put down your guard and you start to, it's okay to put that tinfoil hat on. If you haven't heard us conspiracy theorists, well, we've been vindicated here recently. I mean, I think that that's been happening, periodically along the way, but here as of recently, I think we've really hit vindication on a whole new level. And so when you're hearing things such as this, listen, don't listen to all this nonsense out there, okay? If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make common sense to you, it's probably not right. It's probably not right. And it's okay to have a supernatural worldview, okay? And, if you're not prepared for that yet, then you can wait for this disclosure that's coming. Because once it does, your whole paradigm is going to have to shift, and you better accept things for what they are, because you're going to be presented with a couple different ideas here. One being the truth, and the other being lies, like all these other lies out there, okay? Because what you're dealing with here aren't entities from, the Galactic Federation or some star system or, Zeta Articuli. No. What you're dealing with are interdimensional beings that have been here the entire time. And that is what explains all this phenomena that there is no rational explanation for, as much as they try to present it to you. And so, wear that tinfoil hat proudly. I know I will. Anyway, we could go on about this topic forever, but hopefully you get my point. Rationale has to die. We have to throw it out the window, throw it in the trash, stomp on it, do whatever, but just stop listening to it. And these big voices out there with their big degrees and their letters behind their name and their big words. Eventually, they're going to eat those words. So just let them do their thing out there and let the market speak for itself. Because once people stop listening to this nonsense, it's going to shut them up on its own. So keep bringing that truth. That's what we need to do. Okay? Anyway. This is Stumper, and as always, sorry about your toes if you stepped on them. Subscribe. We're out.